Hi, this is Christina from Proverbs 31 Woman, and here we are. It's a beautiful March day. I'm standing under the plum trees, which look gorgeous. I can't wait for all that fruit. But I thought it would be fun to take you on a weed walk on our homestead, because there are so many things that God has provided for us to eat, even way before the orchard is blooming, or we're even really thinking about starting our seeds for our vegetable garden. So we're just going to take a walk around the homestead. I'm going to show you some really common weeds. Most of them can be found throughout all of the country, all of the United States. And every one of them is edible and varying degrees of deliciousness. Some of them are really, really good. Some of them you might want to save only if you're starving. Anyway, come walk with me. And be sure to check out my blog, Proverbs 31 Woman, because there's more information on most of these weeds there, and it will help you identify them more accurately than you probably can by just watching this video. So this is purple dead nettle. Purple because of the little blooms on it and because some of the leaves kind of have a purplish quality. Dead because unlike the nettle you might be more familiar with, where you brush up against it and it stings, this doesn't have those little stingers. And it is used as a salad herb, so you usually eat it raw. It's nothing spectacular, but it tastes fine and it has good nutrition. This is called yarrow. It grows usually in patches like this, and it's very feathery, very easy to spot, and it will have a white flower in the summer. It's mostly thought of as a medicinal herb. It's great if you have a fever or you want to stop bleeding, a lot of other things. But in the spring, it's tender and very tasty as a salad green. And unlike a lot of other wild weeds, this one's pretty tasty. It tastes a lot like celery. Next is chickweed. This is another really common weed. It grows in like clumps along grassy areas usually. It likes it a little moist, maybe a little bit shady. Ours is growing in our orchard. It's easy to distinguish once it blooms. It has these little tiny white flowers that look like they have 10 petals. But if you look closely, it's actually a 5-petaled flower. I give more tips on the blog about how to identify this, and it is important to make sure you have the right plant, no matter what you're eating, but particularly in this case, because there are some poisonous lookalikes. It is easy to distinguish between chickweed and the poisonous lookalikes, but you have to know the tricks. We're not going to talk about that right now, but you can find it on my blog. So this is a powerhouse food, a superfood. It's full of nutrients. And again, you mostly eat it raw, like in a salad, or you can use it in place of, say, sprouts in a sandwich. You can cook it. It tastes a little bit like spinach when you do that. Otherwise, it just tastes like a really good lettuce. I like it. Now here's a weed that almost everybody recognizes, a dandelion. And almost everybody has them in their lawns or alongside the road. Most people recognize them by their yellow flowers. There are some lookalikes though. And none of them are poisonous, but if you want to make sure you're really getting a dandelion, you want to look closely at the leaves, which we'll talk about in just a minute. All parts of the dandelion are edible. In fact, this was a weed it's not native. It was brought over by people from Europe who recognized it as a great source of food. It's highly nutritious. So I want to start top to bottom. The first thing we'll talk about is the flower. You can eat them. You can eat them raw in a salad. You can turn them into fritters. You can turn them into a very yummy jam that tastes like honey. You can make wine out of them. In fact, you can find all those recipes on my blog. The green parts down on the bottom are more bitter, so usually you want to leave that part out. In fact, sometimes we in my family will pull off the yellow parts and mix it in with our favorite batch of cookies, and it just adds extra nutrition. You don't really taste it, but it adds nutrition. Next would be the buds. Some people like to eat these pickled. You just take a brine that you like from, you know, pickles that you bought at the store, or you can make your own brine and make your own pickles that way. Then there's the stem. Now, I don't mind bitterness in my food, but I will tell you the stem is very bitter. I don't choose to eat the stems, but you might give it a try just to see what it's like. I would recommend cooking them rather than eating them raw. Finally, well, not finally, next we have the leaf. Now, dandelion probably gets its name from this leaf because it's sharp and pointed like teeth, like a lion's teeth. That's how you recognize this and separate it from lookalikes. It's not at all fuzzy, and it has these teeth-like leaves. These are edible, but most of the year they're very bitter. So you want to catch them, ideally before they bloom, before the plant blooms, after you've had a hard winter where there's been snow or lots of hard frosts. Then you can cook them just like kale or collards or whatever you like, and they're very tasty. Once they start getting buds and blooming, they're very bitter. You can overcome that by boiling it and dumping the water, and boiling it and dumping the water until the bitterness is gone, and you still retain a lot of the nutrients. This is a superfood, so it's worth that little bit of extra effort. Then finally is the root. You can dig up the root any time of year, but most people recommend that you do it in the fall because there's more nutrients in the root at that time. Most people use them as medicinal. They're great for your liver, for example. And you will probably want to dehydrate them and maybe roast them. They get a coffee flavor when you roast them. And most people will drink them as tea or a substitute for coffee. You can, however, also cook them like you would any root vegetable. So have you ever seen these little tiny daisy-like flowers in your lawn? They are in fact a lawn daisy, and they're perfectly edible. You know, don't eat them if you've sprayed your lawn with chemicals, obviously. But as long as you're not doing that, these are quite a yummy addition to, say, a salad again. You usually eat them raw. I just pick off the flower, pop it in my mouth. It's good. It's actually pretty tasty. So in different places in our yard, we have what looks like a dark purple, almost reddish clover. It's actually called wood sorrel. There are lots of different types of sorrels that grow wild. This is one that just happens to be really popular in our area. So you can look up for your area what type of sorrels, wild sorrels, not garden soils, you might find. And they're one of our very favorites because they're really lemony. My kids used to always go out in the yard and eat all this up, so there was never enough for everybody else. We just eat it as a snack, or you toss it into a salad or into a sandwich, and it's really, really quite good. Very lemony. Right here behind me is a plant that you will find in any wooded areas you might have on your property, or sometimes just shady, moist areas. It's called Siberian miner's lettuce. There are two types of miner's lettuce. One almost looks like a lily pad and it's bright green. And then there's Siberian miner's lettuce, and that's what we have on our property. And ours is purple, but apparently that's not that common. Usually it's green. But it has a very distinctively shaped leaf. As you can see, it's very pointy on this end and almost heart-shaped toward the top. This, again, is kind of another superfood. It's really high in vitamin C, which is why it's called miner's lettuce. Back in the day when miners were coming to the West, they didn't do so well throughout the winter. They ran out of food and they got scurvy because they didn't have anything fresh with vitamin C in it. And so the Indians presumably taught them about Siberian miner's lettuce, which comes up really early in the spring and is packed with vitamin C. You can cook this and it tastes kind of like spinach, or I prefer to eat it raw like a salad green, and it's very tasty. It tastes like a really good lettuce. Normally it grows in patches, and we do have patches of it on our property, but we also have a lot of single plants, so just keep your eye out for them. They're very distinctive in the spring because of that purplish color. So there you have it. There's a bunch of weeds there already on our property. We started seeing them as early February, and most of these will continue out through the summer. So go look for them, and be sure to check out my blog, Proverbs 31 Woman. Thank you.